Alright, so you guys know the drill already. We got a brand new perfect starter guide this time around for Clair Obscur Expedition 33. I got a chance to play the game for roughly 100 hours at this point, and I gotta say, this game is definitely something. So now that I know everything that I know, there are many things you can go ahead and unlock right away. So I'm gonna show you how to find them, how to build up an amazing synergy early on that deals tons of damage, plus some other goodies on top. And I'm gonna skip some of the story parts, but for now I'm going to focus on the major stuff, so it's not going to be a full-blown walkthrough. However, you can pretty much get one of the first unlocks from very early on, the moment you are about to embark on the expedition. So right here, once the nighttime settles during the prologue, you can get to the lower harbor right here, and you're going to have these three merchants to the left that each provide a special item, but at the cost of a festival token each. And the thing is, you get to only have one festival token when you load in. However, I'm going to show you how to get the other two. So the first festival token will be right here from Antoine, who's going to give you a quick quiz. So it's very difficult to fail this, but I'm going to show you the results anyway. For the first question, it's 67 years. Second one is Expedition 0. And the third one is the abilities answer right here at the top. If you pick these correctly, he's going to give you the second festival token. For the third and final one, you just have to go to the lower harbor right here and talk to Maelle once again, and she's going to challenge you to another duel. My only tip over here is to try and dodge and parry as many attacks as you can. In this case, you're going to out DPS her, and if you win the duel, she's going to give you the third and final token. And in this case, we can now go ahead and purchase all of those items. For the first NPC, that's going to sell us a weird Pictos, which is incomplete, but later down the line, you can transform it into something better. So that happens once you go to the Gestural Village, which is the fourth map. And if you head over to the bazaar here and talk to the merchant, once you exit his dialogue, he's going to stop you and notice that you have a broken Pictos and will offer to actually give you something very close to compensate. And that's going to be a level 5 augmented aim, which gives you plus 50% damage to your free aim. Not too shabby, and it's a better version than the one you got in the first map. Second NPC will give us a hairstyle that you can only get right here. Kind of makes you look a bit like Daniel Radcliffe. And the third and final one, this is going to give you a special key that we're going to eventually use at a secret door later down the line. And that location will be in Old Lumiere a bit later on in the game. Without spoiling anything, from the left street right here, you're going to want to make your way normally the first time you visit, but then go to this right side where you will notice almost like this collapsed sort of tunnel. And if you jump inside, you're going to see this door that if you open, you're going to have a cutscene and also a collectible you can get from over there. It's not really that big, it's mostly for lore purposes. And from here, you're going to just progress normally. Eventually, you're going to reach the area where you get to also recruit Loon. And in this case, you're also going to fight a boss that gives you the Dodger, one of the first Pictos, and a very good one that gives you AP on perfect dodges as well every turn. So it's not just perfect parries that will give you now that, you also get the perfect dodges to give you similar AP. And from this point on, you're going to just progress naturally up until you reach this area called the Meadows Corridor, pretty much when you encounter your first flag. And if you pay attention over here to the right side, there's going to be a small gap in the canyon that you can use, where you can retrieve this very strong Pictos called the Critical Burn. This is going to be the staple for much of our strongest builds from now on. 25% increased critical chance on burning enemies, which is going to be huge because many of our attacks will have extra benefits if we also critical hit the target. From this point on, we're going to head over up until we reach this Grand Meadow area where we can go ahead and buy our first skills. Now, we're gonna talk about the build more in just a little bit, but for now, what I typically like going for in the case of Gustav is to pick the marking shot, as that's going to give us 50% extra damage against the affected target. And in the case of Loon, we're going to go with the Thunder ability right here. Thunderfall is just insane at dealing extra damage, so pick it right away. We're gonna use it later down the line. Now, from this point on, we do have a secret objective over here, which is going to give us some extra cosmetics. So if instead of going to the right side, you go to the left, go past any enemy in the area, eventually you will reach this sort of platform with a Mime. So he's going to be rather resilient, but we can use the marking shot to increase the damage. And this is also going to let us apply more burn stacks via emulation from Lune, which is then going to further buff the damage on the Thunderfall. So once we go back, now we have the red stain to cast Thunderfall for more damage. Mix in some proper dodges and perfect parries, and you can even have a chance to stun him, which is going to reduce a lot of that defense, further enabling the highest possible damage against it, so you should take it out in no time. And this is, by the way, what you get in terms of cosmetics. I especially like the sunglasses. This character, Gustav, has been modeled very close to Charlie Cox, who's actually the one that's voice acting the character. And if you don't know who that is, it's basically Mad Murdock, aka Daredevil, from the Daredevil show. So it looks very similar to that, but with a different hairstyle. Now, from this point on, you can just progress further down the line, back from where we came from. And in this case, we're going to just progress the normal way up until this section right here. Once you dispatch the enemies, just pick off any weapon. If it's an upgrade, go ahead and equip it. And circle around the area a little bit before we progress to the upper section. You're going to find a secret boss over here called Chromatic Lancelier. And if you go ahead and defeat this, like every boss is going to also give a ton of weapon XP. So some of your weapons will also level up, but you also get Augmented Attack, which is going to increase your base attack by 50%. Very useful if you get to use a basic attack build out there for any of the melee characters. Once you're done, we can head over back and go up this wall to progress into the next section, the Abandoned Expedition Camp, where we get to meet up our first friendly Navran right here called Jar. So if you engage in conversation with him, he's going to tell you that he needs help relighting his pillar, but he needs a flammable object for that. So I'm going to show you how to find that in just a little bit. But this is also part of a major story quest that gives you a ton of rewards. So a full-on guide will be on that on the channel really soon. But from this point on, we're going to progress into the next section where we get to find two very strong items to further enable our build. So the first one is going to be the Lighterim Weapon for Lune, which we can get from the first NPCs we get to fight on the path to the right downwards right here. Once you defeat them, this is the one you get, further playing on the elemental fire mechanic, and at higher levels further buffing fire skills as well, even reducing their AP cost, increasing their damage, and eventually even starting with stains that you get to use to buff fire skills in the first place. From this point on, we're going to backtrack a little bit and take the upper ledge, going all the way at the end of it, because there's a very strong Pictos we can find here called the Dead Energy 2. And this gives us plus 3 AP on killing an enemy, which is very strong, as AP lets you spam your abilities more, and you don't even have to be the character that defeats that target to get the AP. Eventually, we can run this on the whole party, so everybody gets extra AP all the time. But from the previous point, we can now find the flammable material, which we can do by just jumping down over here by the bridge area. You're going to notice a bunch of debris with a small little item hidden inside. We saw it from above, so if you destroy it, you're pretty much going to get the resin that you need to bring back at the jar to start up that quest line. So in this case, what you can do is to just head over right here at the Abandoned Expeditioner's camp, talk to him, and give that to him. And in this case, just shoot once into the upper part of that pillar, which is going to light it up and also give you a first reward. Now, this is not going to be a big deal, but for now, the healing tint will help, as you can use healing in combat much more often so that you can keep your allies alive. Now, from here, you want to naturally progress into the game until you reach the second stage called Flying Waters. And right as you load into the map, after the cutscene, follow my steps right here, as we're going to get another very strong Pictos to complete our build. In this case, following this area, you're going to reach this small section that you can take to the left side, a bit upwards, and circle back, where you will find a bunch of enemies protecting the Pictos. So take them down quickly. But this is going to give you this really awesome marking shot, which has a 20% chance to apply mark on free aim shot. And that's going to be very important. We're going to implement free shots in our build to get the mark ready, which is going to further buff our abilities and give us other benefits that will make our build essentially one-shot enemies, but also spam abilities back to back. From here, just progress naturally up until you reach the manor and also get to recruit Maelle. In this case, you can run with her default build for now, as that's going to be good enough. Eventually, maybe even get Pierce, as that's going to be a very strong ability to have. But once you go outside of the manor, you're going to encounter your first merchant. And this is very important because these gestrels over here can give you some really huge benefits. Go and buy the Collar of Lumina. That's going to be important for our secondary quote-unquote skill tree, as we can activate more Pictos for all our characters. And also go ahead and fight the merchant to unlock the secret item over here at the top. This is going to be a very easy one-on-one fight, at the end of which you're going to get the exposing attack that you can go ahead and use for now. Gives you base attack, which applies defenseless for 1 turn, which means you get to increase your damage against that target. But like many of the starting Pictos, it also gives you quite a bit of speed and critical rate, which are 2 of the strongest stats that you will need for your characters, and especially the build that we're going with. From here, progress naturally towards the Coral Cave, and on the way, try to fight any group of enemies, as many will drop new weapons that are direct upgrades, at least for the time being. However, the strongest one is going to be for Leon, and we can find it by going through this small little tunnel over here, kind of like an open bottle. If you go inside of it, you're going to find another friendly Nevron in need of help. This one will need a floating mine, and luckily we can find it here to the right, as there is a quick jumping puzzle we can use to reach the next area. So navigate the platforms, jump, and then go around here up until you reach this section and take up this floating mine from the end of the gap. Once you bring it back to the Nevron, this is what you get from it, the Deminerim Weapon for Leon, which is basically going to be an elemental shock damage that further buffs lightning skills. And lightning skills will pretty much carry you at least up until the mid game with this build. Plus, they are some of the best at staggering enemies. So in this case, they cost less AP and even increase damage at higher levels and so on. So for the time being, we're going to use it in our build until we get a much better option a little bit later down the line. But for now, progress towards the Coral Cave and fight the blacksmith NPC. This is going to give you another weapon that comes with the Frost Elemental, very good to slow down enemies and eventually even cause them to delay their turns. But from here, we're gonna go to the flag, maybe even rest in case you need it, and pick up the 2 Pictos very close to the flag. One is going to be to the right side. Not really that useful for the build, but still quite useful if you're going with a pure base attack build. The other one is going to be a bit further down the line. There's going to be a boss encounter that jumps in front of you. However, once you defeat it, if you pay attention to the small upper ledge, you can go to this upper area and get this very strong rewarding mark Pictos. This gives you plus 2 AP on dealing damage to a marked target once per turn. And remember that both our normal attacks have a chance to mark targets as it is, plus Gustav on his own can guarantee marked targets with his marked attack anyway, so whoever attacks the target after that gets plus 2 AP for that turn, which is going to be insane, as we can generate a ton of AP with this build in just a little bit. Now from here you have 2 secret encounters if you want to check them out real quick. So as you progress from this point on, instead of going forward up this ledge, take it to the left and into the seaweed. There's going to be an upper platform with another Mime that you can go ahead and defeat. This is going to give you another customization option for one of the characters. But if you then backtrack and follow the normal area as usual, go to the upper ledge again, you can now head over into another section here to the right side instead, also through the seaweeds, and kind of circle around a little bit. If you go here, you're going to find a secret virgin encounter that will give you a special item very useful for another Nevron. If this guy eats any of your teammates, make sure to stun them, as that's going to bring them back on the battlefield. But then you're going to get a special skin item from it that we can use to feed another Nevron later down the line. But once we're done, we're going to progress further down the line up until we reach the Lumiere streets, and there are quite a number of routes here that you can take, about 3 of them, but I'm going to show you the most important ones. If you want to further buff base damage, you can take the middle section over here and go using the rooftops, take down any enemies, and then turn here to the right, and again follow the ledge all the way in the back. You're going to get this Pictos called Versatile. After free aim hit, base attack damage increases by 50% for 1 turn. So again, you can totally make a build for that, both for Verso as well as for Gustav. From this point on, you can go back, and from the flag area, we're going to use the area to the left side and just go past any enemy you may find. We're going to circle around and progress further down the line and use any of these ledges to circle back and find the secret Troubadour boss encounter. So make your way over here, jump down, and be ready for this attack, as it's going to be quite strong. In this case, you may want to reload in case you fail, but learning the timings of those attacks should not be too difficult. Plus, also take into account the weak points that you can destroy to increase your damage. And from this point on, just follow the build guide, basically just trying to take down the boss using marking attacks, setting the enemy on fire so we can get extra damage, extra critical hits, and make use of especially Virtuoso stance to fully one-shot or at least deal as much damage against the boss with Maelle. We don't really care about what weapon we get from the boss. What we care about is specifically the Pictos that was right behind it. In this case, we're going to get the Energizing break. We further get plus 3 AP on breaking targets. So we're going to do that a lot with this build. We're going to break targets. We're going to generate a ton of AP. We're going to spam abilities. We're going to deal a ton of damage. So it's going to be one step closer to completion. And finally, we have just 2 more remaining items, both of which we can find in the Ancient Sanctuary, which is basically the 3rd map. So the first one will be pretty much from the entrance, taking this downward path right here. There's a ledge we can reach to the other side, so just use the jumping points and make your way down. You're going to get the Burning Mark, applies burn on hitting a marked enemy. Since we get to mark enemies a ton anyway, we're gonna get even more burns on the target, which will further boost our critical hit chance. And finally, the second one will be once you reach the Sanctuary Maze, pretty much around the middle part of the level. Simply make your way the same way I do until we eventually reach this area with the blue crystal formation. And you're going to see this catapult enemy that we can go ahead and fight right away. So the first time you fight against it, if you win, you're going to get one of the best weapons for Lune in the game, which is the Trebuchim. This is going to give you the next effect at level 4. Generate a random stain on free aim shots. So since we have all of those ways to generate AP, we can now also generate stains, which is basically what powers Lune's ability, and we can pretty much have 4 stains out of 4 on the very first turn you get to play her with, which means you can immediately spam Mayhem and deal the maximum damage and stun, and that's going to be crazy. So let me show you how the complete build looks like. We're going to use the following Pictos to essentially enable this build. We're going to use the critical burn on every character, as that's going to give us that 25% increased critical chance. We're going to use the dodger, obviously, from the early on. Dead energy plus energizing break, since we're going to get AP both from breaking / stunning targets, but also from defeating them. Also the marking shots and the rewarding mark, as both of these will give both mark on regular hits and free aim hits, plus of course getting the extra AP from hitting a target that's marked. So here is the typical rotation. You want Gustav to start first, and in the early stages he can use the marking shot skill that you can unlock for him, which pretty much marks the target the same way. But eventually, once you get the marking shots Pictos, you can use free aim attacks to apply the marks instead. Even though it's a 20% chance to happen, it's still very solid and you can pull it off right away. Now, if you don't have enough AP generation for now, you can just use your AP medicine in this case and just provide 3 AP right away to Lune. And from this point on, switch to her. What happens is that now she's going to have about 7 or 8 AP. However, if you go ahead and also free aim once against the marked target, you're going to further generate another 2 or 3 AP on top, pretty much maxing everything out. But you can continue to spam the aim shots because the Troubadim weapon will let you also get 4 out of 4 stains at the cost of 4 total AP. So going ahead, doing that, we just got 4 of those stains right away, which means we can immediately go ahead and use our Mayhem ability, which is one of the strongest in the game. This only costs like 3 AP, but deals insane damage and can easily break targets. So in this case, if we also set the target on fire, for example, because our shots also burn the targets, you're going to see this insane damage and stagger happening right away. Remember that the staggering Pictos that we got will also buff our break damage by 25%, so by this point you should easily stun almost everything. And from this point on, you can just follow your rotation the normal way if there's any fire on the target, and if you currently, for example, play with Maelle, you can just go ahead and immediately enter the Virtuoso stance with this ability right here. So on the next turn, if anything is still alive, you can pretty much one-shot it. Once it goes back to Gustav, assuming that you also defeated something and got AP back from defeating them, going against the main enemy, you can spam Lumiere Assault, and by this point, with a high critical hit chance, you should pretty much max 10 out of 10 overcharge stacks right away with it. Typically, you should have enough in the tank to follow a second Mayhem with Lune once again if you didn't waste your AP on anything else. And if it survives, you can pretty much unleash your PSA now with Maelle and deal insane amounts of damage. On her own, she can easily reach 10k damage or at least 8.5 depending on your build and critical hit rate. And that's pretty much going to carry you an insane way all the way at least until the mid game. Literally, it trivializes almost everything, even on expert. So this is what I've been doing. However, there's going to be an even stronger version of this build that lets you spam abilities even more often for even more damage. So we're gonna follow that with a different build later down the line. This is it for now. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.